Hello everyone and welcome to Slash Film Daily for April 27th, 2018. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Managing Editor Jacob Hall.
Hello, hello.
And Senior Writer Ben Pearson.
Hey, what's going on?
Okay, so I'm back from Las Vegas, guys, and this is going to be an episode just talking about spoilers for Avengers Infinity War. So if you still have not seen that movie, go out this weekend, see it, and keep this podcast in your podcast app and return to it after you have seen it, because basically the purpose of this is talk about the ending and talk about the spoilers. So if you have not seen the movie, I would not recommend going any further with this podcast. But before we begin, I wanted to get your guys' general impressions of the movie. Jacob, I know you're a big comic book guy. What did you think of Avengers Infinity War?
It's really, really good. I'm not so sure how it holds up as a movie, but as a grandiose multimedia thing that's 10 years in the making, I enjoyed it tremendously. I had a great time with it. I don't think anyone's gonna write a dissertation on it, but it's a very, very entertaining, extremely interesting, and often powerful thing.
Ben, what are your thoughts on the movie?
I would definitely watch this over Civil War any day of the week, and I say that as somebody who is not really a huge fan of Civil War. I was very, very worried about Infinity War, and I came away a little mixed when I walk out of the theater, but I think the more I think about the movie, the more I liked it. It's it's astonishing that they were able to pull this off and make it coherent and emotionally moving, I guess, is a good word for it. And that's the thing that I keep thinking and keep coming back to, is how successful it was in manipulating emotions without necessarily sacrificing quality. So I think there's a lot to like about this film.
Yeah, I saw this film at the world premiere earlier this week, and I don't want to say I loved it, but I really, really liked it a lot, and I've just been thinking about it ever since, and I got home from Las Vegas last night. I think I got home at like 9:30 p.m., and I was like, there's a 10 p.m. screening down the street from our house. Let's go see it. So I saw it again last night, and I do think I like it more than I did after the first viewing. I think this is a film like Empire Strikes Back that I feel like is going to grow on people the more and more they see it. I'm really curious to see what general audiences think, because this movie has such a cliffhanger and downer of an ending, which I don't think people are going to expect. Nobody expects Thanos to win, even though I guess we probably did. But, even though I expected Thanos to win, I didn't expect him to win in this devastating of a way. And, it's funny that all of us, and by all of us, I mean like the internet community of film and comic geeks, we're all arguing over, who's going to get killed. Is it going to be Steve Rogers or is it going to be Tony Stark? And in the end, it was everybody else. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We were all wrong. Let's talk about this ending. I'm not even sure where to start with this. I guess let's start with, do we think all these people are dead? Jacob?
Of course not. Of course not. They killed off or in quotation marks, killed off all the characters who have upcoming sequels or who are still fresh and have movies under contracts, and they conveniently left alive all the actors and characters who are primed to exit for outside legal reasons. So that reason alone is enough to know they're not dead. But I do think that, and Peter, you and I discussed this offline in an article you wrote, that characters who died before Thanos snapped his fingers, like Gamora, Loki, Heimdall, that crew, I think they're dead for good. I think they're gone. But everybody who got phased away by Thanos' grand actions, they'll be back. And that doesn't mean they won't die in Avengers 4. I don't think Iron Man makes that alive in Avengers 4. But Black Panther, Doctor Strange, all those guys, they're coming back for sure.
It's interesting because I feel like a lot of people are going to be in the theater watching this, and they're going to be devastated. And then they're going to be walking out of the theater and being like, hey, wait a second. They're making another Spider-Man movie. And they announced that Black Panther 2, and like, slowly realizing as they're exiting the theater that, like, obviously there's a second part to this, and there's, they're going to have to reverse those. I don't know. Do you want to call them deaths? Like, what should we call when people are turned to ash? Like, what?
I don't know. Phasing away. I don't know.
I do feel like there's a difference between that and the deaths. And it should be noted, I have this piece on slashfilm.com. I'll link it in the show notes. But in the piece, it talks about the whole future of the MCU after this movie. And one of the interesting things is Kevin Feige gave this interview to Entertainment Weekly, I think like a month ago or something. And Entertainment Weekly basically asked, like, if people die in this movie, are people like, there's that criticism that Marvel could just bring them back from the dead, as they have done in the past with numerous people like Loki and Agent Coulson and Samuel L. Jackson, Nick Fury, and Kevin Feige basically said that when they're dead in this movie, they're going to be dead for real. I mean, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but like, he basically says that. Ben, do you think that applies to the people that are phased out, or is that what you called it?
Yeah. No, I don't think so. So I walked out of this movie and I was like, okay, let me try to put myself in the mindset of people who don't read slashfilm.com every day and don't, are not intimately familiar with the contracts of these actors, and try to think about this from a general audience perspective. Is there any way that Marvel could sort of stick to this ending and like actually hold true to it and make it and not undo it moving forward? And I was thinking, for Black Panther, if they killed Black Panther, if the phasing away equals death in this instance, and T'Challa is gone, I was like, okay, maybe they could put Shuri in the suit for the next movie or something like that. Have a different character that we've already seen in the Black Panther solo movie take over that mantle. But then as soon as you get to Spider-Man, it becomes impossible because there's no way to just throw somebody else in that suit, because you have to also have a radioactive spider bite them, and it just doesn't work. So
that's why I think that Spider-Man's a big key here. The moment Spider-Man fades away, it should click in everybody's minds, oh, this is going to get reversed, because I can see them killing off everybody else, but not Spider-Man.
And I just want to give a quick shout out to that moment, because I did not cry in this movie. I know a lot of people who did, but I have to say that Spider-Man moment, the scene where Tom Holland is in Tony Stark's arms and he is like, I don't want to go. I mean, that was like as close as I get to crying in a movie. My tears were welling up in my eyes. That was like, Tom Holland is like so good in this film.
Oh, I teared up for sure during that, and that was probably the only moment in the movie. I mean, it did hit me, that moment where Gamora realizes that Thanos loved her. Like, it got to me, but like, it didn't make me tear up. Jacob, did any of the moments in this movie hit you emotionally?
I talked about this on Twitter for anyone who follows me, but I was incredibly impressed by Thanos and Josh Brolin's performance as Thanos, this motion capture performance where he's providing the voice and the reference point for the visual effects artists. And the most impressive thing about this character is that he's played and presented as being completely sober-minded. He's not a maniac. He's not a lunatic. He doesn't have greedy plans of like make himself rich or powerful to control the universe. In his own mind, he wants to save the universe. And the movie presents this as being something he thinks is the right thing to do. And during the scene where he realizes he needs to kill Gamora, and he starts crying because he genuinely loves her, even though nobody else in the film believes he's capable of love or affection, it didn't make me cry, but it like hit me like a freight train. Like, just watching the most powerful guy in the Marvel Universe, guy who's killing all of our favorite characters, being presented with such empathy and such humanity. It was unlike anything I've seen in a Marvel movie ever. I mean, even Killmonger in Black Panther, who's a more empathetic villain, even he is still ultimately painted as, yes, he has to go. But Thanos here, I found him so complicated, and I have so many mixed feelings on him, and it really, really hit me in a way I was not expecting.
Yeah. Can I ask you guys one question about Thanos before we go on any further? I really loved the part when, I forget who it was, I think it was Doctor Strange, asks him, like, okay, and then what? Like, after Thanos explains his plan, like, to wipe out half of the universe, Doctor Strange says, and then what? And that is always my question for every comic book villain ever, because it's always like, world domination, and then your follow-up question is like, okay, why? Like, what do you want to do? And I think Thanos' answer was something like, I just want to sit there and relax and essentially have the world or the universe thank me for what I've done. And then like, and I was like, okay, I appreciate that this film tried to answer that question, but then it's sort of, I don't know, it's stuck in the back of my head again, where it's like, okay, and then what? Like, it kept coming up again. Like, is that really his end game? Just to sit there and take a breath and be like, okay, I've done this thing. I don't know. Jacob and Peter, did you guys have any thoughts about that?
I do, because that's why we see Thanos chilling out on a farm at the end, kind of just in retirement, because he's won. He's unemployed. He doesn't have a job anymore. And I hope Avengers 4 explores this. What happens when the villain wins? What happens when he gets what he wants? We never see that in these movies. I mean, does it mean he's satisfied? Does it mean he's bored? Does he want more? Does he feel regret? I mean, where you see a big dangling question mark, I see opportunity for something to be explored that's never been done before.
Yeah, and I think that "and then what" could be applied to, the good guys as well, or even like, anything in the world. Like, an Apple becomes the number one computer company in the world, and they have achieved that goal, and then what? I guess it's like staying on top.
Right.
But I don't know. I do think, I think the "and then what" is, him sitting down, watching the sunrise, and knowing that he has accomplished his goals. And we see that in the last shot of the movie, which is so good, by the way, that it ends on him, almost as if this movie, he is the protagonist of this movie, and he has won, and the Avengers were the bad guys in his story. I don't know.
Did your audience boo when the credits said Thanos will return?
Yes.
Mine did.
Mine had so many jeers.
I love that. Well, we're jumping ahead, but I love how they get to the mid-credit scene, like, after the initial star credits, and it goes to, like, the real credits, and usually that Marvel has a scene in between there, and there was nothing. At the world premiere, like, there was probably the loudest gasp collectively from like a theater of people I've ever heard. And I ran into Kevin Feige afterwards at the world premiere, and he was just like glowing at that gasp. Like, he was like, it was all worth it for that, like, gasp, that people realize that this is it. Do you know what I mean? But we're jumping ahead here. I do want to go back and talk about these guys that are really dead. So all of us believe that Tom Hiddleston is really dead. I mean, Loki.
Yes.
And Idris Elba's character, does anybody believe that somehow he survived?
No, especially since... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, they gave Thor his powers for a reason.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, especially since Idris Elba, I think, has been, one of the actors who's the least interested publicly in returning for more Marvel movies. It seemed sort of like a Harrison Ford in Force Awakens kind of situation. Like, they're putting him out of his misery almost.
And by the way, we were so fooled by, we thought, like, just because Hugo Weaving had no interest in coming back for another Marvel movie, reprising his role as Red Skull. I remember even you, Ben, talking about it on the podcast.
Yeah.
There was no way Red Skull was going to be in this movie. And he was. They just replaced him.
I was shocked.
It's a funny anecdote here. When the first cloaked figure starts hovering in front of Thanos, my wife leans in and whispered to me, "That ring wraith sounds like Elrond." And it turns out it's a Hugo Weaving impersonator, and it's such a bizarre little moment.
Okay. Oh, wait, actually, while we're on Red Skull, I know we're jumping around here a bit, but do you think his appearance here is to set up anything in the future of the MCU, or do you think that's just a cool kind of, like, end for him because, he was so involved with the Cosmic Cube?
I'm interested in what Jacob has to say about this.
What it reminded me most of, it has nothing to do with anything, is how in the current Marvel continuity, Nick Fury was essentially exiled to the moon, and now acts as the Watcher for Earth, sort of chronicling all the important events, and no longer being a man of action, but sort of being cursed to watch all these major events, both evil and heroic, happen around him. And I'm wondering if maybe this is being applied to the Red Skull, this formerly massive figure who now must stand by the sidelines and observe. And that's all I can think of. Maybe I'm completely off base, but that's what I was wondering.
I feel like it has interesting implications for the future of the MCU because, and I don't remember, it's been a little while since I've seen Captain America: The First Avenger, but it seemed like Red Skull sort of dissipated into thin air, like was obliterated at the end of that movie, and then he seems pretty normal and put together in Infinity War. So I'm wondering if that implies that, you know, maybe people who we think are dead are not actually dead. Maybe they've just been transported to a different planet or a different plane of existence or something along those lines. What do you think about that, Peter?
They're now Force ghosts in this Marvel Cinematic Universe?
Maybe, or yeah, but I don't know. Well, I mean, would you even call Red Skull a Force ghost? Like, do you think he has like a corporal body? Or I don't know how that works.
I don't know. It's almost like this is a video game and he went from being a main character into a, what do you call that, NPC. It's somewhere in the universe. Anyways, I'm wondering if, well, it also begs the question because these Infinity Stones started with the Big Bang, they explain in this movie, right? So they like were part of the creation of the universe as we know it. Mm-hmm. So who was guarding the Soul Stone before Red Skull? Any ideas, Jacob?
Whoever was unfortunate enough to encounter the Tesseract before him. The Tesseract is a space stone. It transports people through space. So I think that if it's apparently by their accident or design, it chose Red Skull to go guard the Soul Stone. That would be my wager.
It's also interesting that we all were betting on where the Soul Stone would be. We all thought it was going to be on Wakanda, or there was other theories, and then it ended up being someplace no one guessed. Do you know what I mean? So this film was filled with kind of like the surprises. Let's get back to the people that died. Do either of you think Gamora could still be alive? We see her get thrown off a cliff. Thanos sacrificed her. I mean, we see her kind of like laying there dead at the bottom of but I mean, she could still be alive, right?
Man, I don't know. I don't think she could be alive in, you know, that shot of her with her legs askew and it looked like blood coming out of the back of her head. I mean, that seemed to me to indicate that she was dead at that point in the movie. But I don't know if you want to talk about what we think might happen in Avengers 4 yet or save that for later. But I think maybe Gamora, there's a chance that she could get resurrected. I don't know.
Well,
all I know is that, go ahead.
I was going to say, even Thanos says when he kills Tom Hiddleston's Loki, he says that there will be no resurrection this time. And I kind of take that as being everybody that dies in this movie, it's not going to happen for them. What were you going to say, Jacob?
I was going to say that James Gunn has said in the past that Guardians Volume 3 will feature a slightly revised lineup. I was wondering if that was his coy way of saying Gamora won't be part of it, maybe replaced by Nebula or someone else. And I do think that if you're going to push that cast into the cast of Guardians into the next area, removing a member, having like the Peter Quill's love interest, having a key member of the core team be killed off is where you put that family next. How do they grieve Gamora? So just going from that evidence, I think that she is very dead, and Guardians will be a little different in Volume 3.
Okay, the final one of our heroes that I think might be definitely dead, and that is Paul Bettany's Vision. Do you think Shuri might have been able to like back up his data or something, or do you think this is the last we're seeing of Vision?
That's a good question. It seemed like when Thanos ripped the Mind Stone out that his husk was pretty lifeless and darkened there. So I don't know if that particular android host body is going to be inhabited again. But yeah, maybe he shows up as like another version of Jarvis, you know, just like another, maybe he returns from whence he came, kind of back to a computer program, but maybe slightly altered this time.
And then we'll have, you know, how Marvel's always doing these like takes on genre movies, like, you know, what the heist movie with Ant-Man, you know, like that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe they can do a version of her with Wanda and Vision is the computer system.
Wow.
No? Okay, maybe not.
I'll throw this pitch at Marvel right now. There is a 12-issue series from a few years ago called Vision that followed Vision as he takes a civilian job working for the government and creates his own android family and tries to live in suburbia, and things go horribly wrong. It's essentially a mid-budget horror story, but sci-fi gone awry and AI gone terribly wrong, set in the Marvel superhero universe. But a big plot point of it is that Vision is very much trying to control his own destiny, create his own family, try to recenter himself. So if they do bring him back, if he's not dead, and they want to make a Vision movie, Vision can't open to $200 million, but he can center a $50 million sci-fi horror movie. So call me Marvel.
I'm gonna have to check that series out. I'm putting it on my list right now. Okay, we should talk about who might still be alive off screen. Tessa Thompson's Valkyrie. We don't see her in the rubble. We don't see Korg or Meek in the rubble on the Asgardian ship. I have heard that there is like part of the distress signal that opens up the movie mentions that some have escaped the slaughter. Do you think that they are still alive?
I mean, it would be really easy for them to explain that away because they could just be on a separate ship, maybe off doing some sort of reconnaissance mission or something like that, and then they return and see that, maybe they're completely unaware of the events of Infinity War, and we can pick up with them sort of returning to where they thought the ship would be, and then coming across the destruction that Thanos left behind.
Yeah. I guess the final person I'm kind of curious to hear your thoughts on is Benicio del Toro's The Collector. We see him in this movie with Thanos above him trying to get the one of the Infinity Stones, but it ends up being just like a vision of the past, or like what Thanos wants them to see?
Yeah, I think just a projection. Yeah.
And then when we see reality, the Collector's museum is like just destroyed, and the Collector is nowhere to be found. Does that mean he is dead?
I don't think it means he's dead, but I think he's definitely off the table for now. I don't think anybody's screaming for more Collector appearances. But I do think they left it open-ended, because if he's dead, he's dead. But if they need him back for a future story, hey, he's available. I think that's a deliberately unanswered question, because Marvel probably doesn't even know if they want him back for a future movie or not. Who knows?
Okay, one interesting thing is when people start to disappear, erased from existence, I will say, which I think is the loophole that puts it so that, Kevin Feige's statement that the people that die in this movie are dead. These people have not died. They have been erased or transferred somewhere. But the people that are left, it is remarkably the original core Avengers team. Jacob, do you have any thoughts on why that is? Is there a reason for that?
There may be an in-universe reason, like fate bound them together, but I think the more logical thing here is one last hurrah for the old crew before they're replaced by Captain Marvel, Doctor Strange, and Black Panther in Phase 4.
And also, it's like you were mentioning before, Peter, just the most surprising thing they could have done, because it was almost an inevitability in our minds that a lot of those characters would be the ones to bite the dust in this movie, and that's not what happened.
What if we're actually in the multiverse, or the version of reality that actually gets erased? Do you know what I mean? And the people that actually got erased were the people that stayed.
Yeah, that was one of my thoughts, was we've already seen Thanos using the Reality Stone to trick people into thinking that they're seeing something that they're not. So what if the entire ending, the entire idea of all of these people being wiped away is actually some sort of elaborate ploy on his part? I don't really know what his end game would be there. And my wife and I were sort of speculating about this when we walked out of the theater, and she was thinking, because the Time Stone is also involved, maybe he has gone far enough into the future that he's realized the devastating effects that killing Gamora has done to himself, and maybe he has already, I don't know, maybe he's used the Time Stone to somehow turn time backwards and also apply this reality projection onto the world just as an I don't know, some sort of test he's offering up to humanity. I don't know.
I don't know what that would do, though, and that would make Avengers 4 like a short film, I think, at that point. Okay, so I guess we're all, I think, under the assumption that Avengers 4 has to have something to do with time travel, right? Like, they have to reverse the scenario in some way. Jacob, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, whether it's time travel through the time zone or time travel through another means. I know there are those set photos from a few months back that show recreations of the Battle of New York from the Avengers, which Joe Russo, the director, has debunked, saying offer a different explanation. Or I don't know. I don't know how time travel comes about, but I feel like that's the only way to do it. Either that, or they get a hold of the Infinity Gauntlet and snap their fingers, and everything just comes back. But I do think that we're going to be seeing extensive use of the Time Stone, because Doctor Strange seemed very, very aware of what he was doing in those final moments. He was not making a mistake. He was very much in control of his decisions, and he was the one who handed the Time Stone over after deliberately going against what he said he would do. He said he would not save Tony Stark and give up the Time Stone, but he did just that.
Yeah, but that was before he went into the future and saw all 14,604 possible scenarios in which only one of them had the Avengers winning against Thanos. So,
yeah, and I think the idea of him, the only one reality that would work is the one where he actually gives up the Time Stone. I think makes a lot of sense, because as Jacob said, he was very, very adamant about never giving that up. And then maybe just the final instance of like, okay, what if I do give it up is the thing that wins it in the end for the Avengers.
Well, there is this kind of throwaway line. I want to say throwaway line because I feel like when most people see this movie, they don't like think about this line after leaving the theater, and that is right before Doctor Strange disintegrates into ash. He tells Tony Stark it was the only way. And I think this is in reference to this is the only possible timeline. This is the decision. This is in the timeline that they are actually going to win. And to win, they need to lose in some way.
Right.
Now, I know Jacob has another thought on this, but I'm wondering, well, first of all, I want to debunk a theory I think that I came up with. It was like maybe the theory is one of the possible, 14 million possible outcomes was, him doing that to kill time, and then Thor shows up with the Stormbreaker and cuts off Thanos' arm instead of striking him in, his heart. I don't think that's possible, because I think, for Thor, if you look at Thor's journey in this movie from a character perspective, he's looking at this as a Thor movie. He's looking at this like this is, if you look at his whole run in this movie, it's almost as it's a revenge tale. Thanos has killed his brother, and it's his journey to get the weapon to kill Thanos and, enact his revenge. And I think in that revenge tale, there's no possible multiverse version where Thor appears and doesn't use the Stormbreaker to, cut into his chest instead of his arm. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Anyways, that's just a geeky whatever. But the thing I was going to suggest here is it possible that Doctor Strange has put a spell on the Time Stone, and thus when he hands it over to Thanos, and Thanos, uses it to erase half of the universe, that somehow it's not erasing them, but transporting them to another time, dimension, or place. Ben, any thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know how much the Time Stone... we see him use the Time Stone to reverse Wanda's killing of Vision later in the movie. So we know that the Time Stone works as it did in Doctor Strange. But I don't know if Strange is... he is the master of the mystic arts, but I don't know if he's capable of applying some sort of spell. I guess there's nothing... I guess I should say there's nothing in the movie that reveals that sets up in any way that he would be capable of producing a spell that allows the Time Stone to function as normal, but also serves a different purpose when combined with the rest of the stones. I just don't know if that's plausible.
Okay, well, I don't know. I'm kind of wondering. Well, okay, let's go to Jacob, because Jacob, I know you have a different theory on this. Like, what has happened here? Is there a spell?
I don't think there's a spell. In fact, I want to echo back to something you said earlier, Peter, or at least something you implied earlier. I do think that Doctor Strange saw the right future. He saw the one future everybody lives, but in that one future, it involved everybody losing very badly first. Everybody has to fade away. The Avengers have to fall apart. The universe has to suffer this huge blow in order for victory to happen, because there was no victory in that moment. There's only a long-term victory. So whether or not that long-term victory ends up involving time travel or not, we'll see. But I don't think there's a spell.
By the way,
I think
if I was Doctor Strange and I saw this one possible victory, and I knew that we had to lose to get there, wouldn't you tell the rest of the team that?
No, they wouldn't believe you. You don't tell Iron Man, you don't tell Tony Stark, hey, we got to lose. He's the guy least likely to ever believe that. I think that he made the right choice, having read the room.
Okay, let's talk a minute about the upcoming films. Ant-Man and the Wasp comes out in, a couple months? And seems to be largely not related to this movie. Ant-Man and the Wasp weren't even in this movie or referenced in this movie. The film takes place in the aftermath of Civil War, so that takes place, years before this movie, I guess. And we don't know, how this connects with Infinity War, or if it connects with Infinity War. I remember when I was on the set of, Avengers 4, sorry. When I was on the set of Infinity War, I know that Joe Russo said that of Captain America and Ant-Man and the Wasp, the one that they were working in conjunction with the filmmakers of the other film the most was Ant-Man and the Wasp, that there's some connections of some kind. So, Ben, do you have any ideas on how Ant-Man and the Wasp might connect with Infinity War and Avengers 4?
I'll steal from our own Brad Oman, who we were talking about this a little bit earlier in our Slash Film Slack channel, and he was suggesting that maybe Ant-Man and the Wasp are in the quantum realm during their movie, and then they pop out after the events of Infinity War, and that makes sense to me, because we know that they're going into the quantum realm in Ant-Man and the Wasp to retrieve Janet Van Dyne, but we don't really know, and like you said, most of the film takes place in the aftermath of Civil War, so we assume that's, a couple years ago in movie time, but we also don't know how that film ends. So it seems very plausible that they would go into the quantum realm, and as we know, time is a little wonky down there, so maybe when they pop back out, things, they're coming out in the aftermath of Infinity War instead of Civil War.
Yeah, the quantum realm is an alternate dimension, only accessible through magical energy or the Pym particles. In the quantum realm, space and time are believed to be irrelevant. So I'm wondering if well, I also think there's the possibility that somehow some of these people have been sent to the quantum realm in some way, but maybe I'm wrong. It does seem like Ant-Man and the Wasp are setting up this quantum realm to be a bigger part of this universe than just that little corner of it. I'm wondering if it's going to fit into there. Do you guys think, coming off of Infinity War, do you think people are going to be disappointed when they go to see Ant-Man and the Wasp and it's a prequel to Infinity War and doesn't take place, it doesn't have any answers for them?
It's a really good question. I think certain audiences may see it as a really refreshing afternoonment compared to the heavy Infinity War, which it's a pulverizing movie, whereas the Ant-Man had sequel to be these very zippy, fun, escapist movies. So I think that, you'll see some people grumbling about it, but I think you'll see more people happy for the break.
Okay, let's talk about the after credits sequence just quickly. Ben, you wrote this up for the site. What happens in the after credits sequence?
Yes, so we see S.H.I.E.L.D. agents Nick Fury and Maria Hill driving through the streets of New York, and suddenly a helicopter crashes into a building nearby. We assume that its pilot has vanished because the effects of Thanos snapping his fingers has finally caught up with them, and people just start disappearing in the streets. Maria Hill sort of phases away into nothing, and Nick Fury runs into the back of his vehicle and pulls out this mysterious device and manages to send a signal right before he himself turns into dust. So the camera pans down and we see this logo on this device, and it's the logo of Captain Marvel. The device looks sort of like a beeper or a pager or something, and I think that means that it's probably old technology, which sort of ties in with the 1990s setting of the upcoming Captain Marvel solo movie. So I think there's definitely some sort of contingency plan in place where Fury and Carol Danvers have some sort of agreement where if shit hits the fan hard enough, he's going to call her and she's going to come save the day.
Well, this is interesting. We don't know what Captain Marvel really is. We know it's set in the 1990s, that Samuel L. Jackson reprises his role as Nick Fury, with two eyes this time. And, it's the bad guys are the Skrulls. But we don't know where Captain Marvel has been for the last, almost 30 years. But apparently she's around because, he has this device to call her. Jacob, where do you think she's been? Are we going to find out in Captain Marvel?
Yeah, in fact, I wouldn't be surprised if the Captain Marvel post-credit scene is Carol Danvers getting a message on her beeper from Nick Fury saying, come back to Earth. But I think she's in space. That's the easy answer because Captain Marvel spends a lot of time in space. She's half alien DNA. I think that for whatever reason, she had to flee Earth, maybe to keep the Skrulls from coming back, maybe for a different reason. And she's been gallivanting around the galaxy for 30 years, not aging because she's half alien. And I think that we'll get all that set up and established right before the credits. We see her fly into space, and right after the credits, we see her coming back home.
Yeah. The one thing I didn't expect from this movie, out of all the things, is that it would be a crossover with the HBO Leftovers show. Right? It definitely seems like it, that sequence, if anybody out there has watched that show. Okay, so let's talk, I think a lot of people coming out of the sequence, by the way, some of the best, end credit sequences in Marvel cinematic history have had, moments where most of the theater is like, what does that mean? Who is that? And, starting with Nick Fury in Iron Man, or Thanos' appearance in Avengers, and this one. So, I would put this up there, but I do think it's a little deceptive to think that people are going to go into Captain Marvel looking for answers, and it's this period piece. In fact, actually, I have learned that this after credit scene is something that was shot late in reshoots, that they originally had no after credit scene whatsoever, which I think would have been extremely bold to end it with everybody in the theater waiting for something and there to be nothing but Thanos will return in.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm wondering, guys, where. So I guess you answered the question. Captain Marvel is in space, but do you think Captain Marvel, the movie, otherwise will at all address Infinity War?
I don't think so, not at all. I think it's just going to be pure and simple Captain Marvel origin story with maybe a post-credit scene tying it in. But I do think getting this complete character bio, getting to know her so well through her own movie, will mean that 2 months later, when she pops up in Avengers 4, you don't need to do the heavy lifting. Everybody already knows.
Yeah. Well, they'll have to explain her disappearance and also why Ant-Man and the Wasp were not seen in Infinity War. And
where Hawkeye was, too.
Yeah, where Hawkeye was. All these characters are appearing in Avengers 4, the yet-to-be titled Avengers 4, which I guess that leads us to the end of this podcast, which I want to talk about what will Avengers 4 be titled, because for some time now, the filmmakers and Kevin Feige have said that the Avengers 4 title has not been announced because it's a bit of a spoiler for Infinity War. Now that we've seen Infinity War, what do you think the title is going to be? Ben?
My guess would be Avengers Reassembled, or maybe like Avengers Resurrected, something that's because like you were saying, we don't know how general audiences are going to respond to the ending of this movie, and they don't know that Avengers 4 is coming out yet because they don't read our site and they don't pay close attention to them. My parents don't know. They might go see Infinity War because they've seen a bunch of the Marvel movies, but they don't know the layout of the future of this franchise. So the idea of Marvel titling this Avengers 4 something that is sort of reassuring to the audience, like, hey, come on back, it's okay, we didn't actually do the thing that you thought we did at the end of Infinity War, kind of makes sense to me, but I don't know. Do you have any theories?
For the longest time, I thought Avengers Disassembled, but after seeing this film and seeing the downer ending, I don't think that would play to general audiences. I think they need something more optimistic, like your suggestion of Reassembled. Although Disassembled is a comic line, right? I'm not sure Reassembled is. Jacob might know better than I. Jacob, what are your idea? What is your idea for a title?
My idea for a title makes sense in that it's a line of dialogue from the movie, which I think is going to be Avengers Endgame, which I think says everything you know. It's the endgame for Phase 3. It suggests finality. It's simple. It gets the point across. But it's not a spoiler for Infinity War. It's not something that you need to keep hidden. So maybe I'm completely wrong there. But the moment that line was said, I think it was Doctor Strange who says this is the endgame.
Yes.
Somebody says it, and the moment I heard that, that's the title of the next movie.
Okay, as a person who reads the comics, Jacob, I know Marvel loves to take their titles from the comics. Not that all the titles have been from the comics, but a vast majority have. So I'm wondering if any of the Infinity titles will be a possibility, like Infinity Gauntlet. Is there a reason why that shouldn't be a title?
I think because it makes sense in that if the next movie is about the fight for the Infinity Gauntlet, as in the Avengers want to take it from Thanos and use it to fix everything, then yeah, it's maybe an appropriate title. But I feel like it's a bit of a letdown after Infinity War. It's referring to an object in your title after your previous ones about this massive conflict. It just feels weird to me in a way that I can't quite put in the words. I think we're going to get something that doesn't have the word infinity in it.
What about the title from the sequel in the comics, the Infinity Crusade? No? Okay. I know the comic doesn't sound anything like where we're headed in the MCU. And also, actually, one last thing. I was watching this movie again last night, and after Thanos snaps his fingers and we come back to him, it looks like the gauntlet is kind of like burnt and like, I'm not sure if it's wrecked. Is it like a one-time use thing at that level of power?
Yeah, it was definitely damaged. It was definitely crumpled and burnt up a bit. So I'm very curious to see if this means Thanos' power is gone, or if it means maybe the gauntlet can only do an action that big one more time, which means who gets to use it, Thanos or the Avengers. So it's definitely something worth noting.
Can I ask you guys what might be a very dumb question? And I only saw this movie once, and it was a few days ago, so I don't remember. And you guys might have this a little more fresher in mind, especially you, Peter, since you just saw it again last night. But so after Thanos snaps his fingers, do we see him interacting with anyone in the quote-unquote real world again? Because in my recollection, we only see him in that really cool orange sequence where he's like walking on water and he sees like the vision of young Gamora, and then we see him at the very end like sitting in a hut looking out over this farm planet kind of thing. And I'm wondering if like when he snapped his fingers, if we didn't see him again, is he included in the people who disappeared and vanished into nothing?
I never even thought of that possibility. Jacob, do you have any thoughts?
It's an interesting thought, and you're right. He definitely does not interact with anybody for the rest of the movie. We only see him in that fantasy sequence, and then on his farm at the end.
Yeah, so and that farm, like he used the Reality Stone earlier when he was standing on Titan to show the people there what his planet used to look like. And when in that final shot of him looking out over that, it sort of reminded me, the landscape sort of reminded me of what his planet used to look like before it was destroyed. So I wonder if it's almost like an alternate dimension, or if it's some sort of version of an afterlife for Thanos. I don't know. It was just something that crossed my mind that I was wondering if it might factor in future entries.
Well, we're going to have to speculate about this for some time because Avengers 4 does not hit theaters for another year. Right, so we're gonna have to wait and see what happens, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it on the podcast and on the site. You can find links to my piece on from the site and Ben's piece on the post-credit sequence in the show notes and on the site /film.com. This podcast /film Daily is published every weekday, bringing you the latest news and best features from /film.com. You can find it on all the popular podcast apps. Please go write a review for us on iTunes, spread the word, tell your friends, and we'll see you on Monday.